Here's my beta husband. Time for the upgrade. The words sliced through the rooftop party like a cold knife. For a split second, I thought maybe I'd misheard her. Maybe the music had distorted Evelyn's voice, or maybe she was quoting someone else. But then the crowd laughed. Actual, genuine laughter. Like they'd just been handed the best punchline of the night. I stood there, champagne glass trembling in my hand, staring at the woman I'd shared my life with for nearly a decade. Evelyn, the ambitious, brilliant, endlessly driven founder of Nexora, a rising star in New York's tech scene, was on stage, microphone in one hand, her other hand sweeping toward me like a magician revealing a trick. "Don't look so stunned, Daniel," she added, her tone sweet as honey, yet laced with venom. "You had to know this was coming." "I mean, look around you. Investors in tailored suits, venture capitalists with slicked back hair, startup founders in their late 20s sipping overpriced cocktails. Every single one of them turned to stare at me. Some smirked, some whispered. A few even applauded, as if humiliating your spouse during a Series B funding announcement was some bold, modern kind of theater. My face burned, my stomach knotted. 8 years of partnership, financial, emotional, personal, reduced to a cruel joke in under 30 seconds. And then she did it. She pulled an envelope from the side pocket of her designer dress with a flourish, like a magician producing a final trick. "Divorce papers," she announced, smiling wide. "It's time I moved on to someone more compatible with the future I'm building." The room erupted. Some laughed, some gasped, some clapped nervously. I stood frozen, my whole life collapsing in real time, while Evelyn basked in the spotlight, playing the role of the fearless disruptor who even disrupted her marriage for the sake of... My name is Daniel Hayes. I'm 40 years old, an IT consultant by trade, the kind of guy who makes sure businesses don't collapse under the weight of their own technology. Servers, networks, security protocols. Unglamorous work, but reliable. Work that pays the bills, builds steady credit, and ironically, keeps the lights on for people like Evelyn. I met her 11 years ago, when she was a scrappy grad student with big dreams and an even bigger student debt problem. She was studying computer science, but had her eyes set on becoming a founder, one of those Silicon Valley unicorn types who raised millions, disrupted industries, and gave keynote speeches at flashy conferences. Back then, she was brilliant, but broke. I was steady, well off, and hopelessly smitten. She'd talk about her ideas late into the night, drawing sketches of apps and platforms on napkins, filling whiteboards with flowcharts that sprawled across our apartment. I'd listen, encourage her, and eventually invest in her. Not just emotionally, financially. Because every dream costs money, and Evelyn's dreams were expensive. It started small. She needed a better laptop for coding. Fine. Then she needed access to premium developer tools, which came with hefty subscription fees. All right. Then came the real kicker, her first startup attempt. "Just a little seed money," she'd said, eyes wide, voice full of that conviction that could make you believe anything. 10,000. That's all I need to build the prototype. Once investors see it, we'll get funding, and you'll get your money back tenfold. I dipped into my savings and wrote the check. That prototype? It flopped. Investors didn't bite. But Evelyn didn't stop. She pivoted. She always pivoted. Every pivot came with new costs. Business licenses, domain names, legal paperwork, office space, marketing campaigns, cloud servers. Each time events. The late nights at the office multiplied. The weekends networking at conferences became routine. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages she didn't want me to see. Conversations went quiet the second I entered the room. I brushed it off, told myself it was just the startup grind, stress, pressure, growing pains. Until that night on the rooftop, when she finally showed her hand. Picture it. Manhattan skyline glowing in the background. String lights overhead. A rooftop filled with investors who had just poured millions into Nexora's Series B round. Evelyn, in her element, standing under the spotlight, champagne in hand, delivering her speech about innovation, disruption, and the future of data. And then, me. Her property. Her punchline. Here's my beta husband. Time for the upgrade. The room roared. She basked. And I realized that everything I had built with her wasn't just underappreciated. It was disposable. But Evelyn made a mistake that night. A big one. She thought my support was separate from my worth. That she could discard me while keeping the empire I'd helped her build. She forgot one simple truth. When you build on borrowed ground, you'd better hope the foundation doesn't walk away. I didn't go straight home that night. I couldn't. The laughter still echoed in my ears as I drove through the city streets, headlights blurring against the rain-slick asphalt. Every honk, every flashing billboard, every muffled bass beat from a passing car seemed to mock me. I pulled into a quiet parking lot near the river and sat in my car, staring at the skyline Evelyn had wanted to conquer. My fingers drummed against the steering wheel. The envelope sat on the passenger seat, unopened, taunting me. Divorce papers, served with champagne and applause. I should have felt devastated. I should have been broken. But instead, something else settled over me. Cold, steady, almost clinical. She thinks I'm disposable? She thinks she can build an empire on my credit, my contracts, my guarantees, and then cut me loose like I was some beta test? Number. Not happening. It was nearly midnight when I made my first call. Daniel? It's late. Everything okay? James, my business attorney, answered groggily. I could almost hear him sitting up in bed. I need you to review every contract I've signed for Evelyn's company, I said flatly. Every loan guarantee, every software license, every co-signer arrangement. I want to know where my leverage is, and I want to know by tomorrow. A pause, then, Jesus, Daniel, what happened? She served me divorce papers at her Series B party, made me the entertainment for her investors. Another pause, longer this time, then a low whistle. That's brutal. Yeah, and now I'm done playing nice. By the time I got home, adrenaline had replaced the shock. I went straight to my office, pulled out the filing cabinet, and dumped folder after folder onto the desk. Years of paperwork, neatly organized. The seed loan for So, because their cash flow is still tight, the Series B isn't fully dispersed yet. If you revoke your guarantees, banks will demand immediate collateral. Equipment financing will call the balance. Insurance gets canceled. And the IP, she paused, Daniel, you technically own their software. I stopped pacing. Say that again? You own the IP, unless Evelyn files an amendment, which she never did. The code base is yours, which means if you pull permission, they can't legally deploy it. A slow smile spread across my face. Thank you, Becky. That's all I needed to hear. At dawn, I walked into my bank, suit pressed, tie straightened, folder in hand. The manager, a guy I'd known for years, raised his eyebrows. Daniel? Early for you. I need to discuss my guarantees, I said. We sat down in his office. I slid the folder across the desk. Every one of these is tied to my name. I want out. Effective immediately, where possible. He flipped through the papers, whistled softly. That's a lot of exposure. Are you sure? Dead sure. He nodded. Most of these agreements have a 30-day withdrawal clause for guarantors. Some are even sooner given, well, the change in circumstances. Divorce qualifies, right? Definitely. I leaned back. Good. Draft the notices. Certified delivery. Today. By noon, I'd sent out 12 withdrawal notices. By evening, 17. I should have felt guilty, but I didn't. Instead, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Control. For too long, I'd been the quiet partner, the background character, the guy who signed the papers while Evelyn took the stage. Now, for the first time, the roles had reversed. She had the spotlight, but I had the switch that controlled whether it stayed on. It didn't take long. By Tuesday afternoon, Evelyn called. Daniel, we need to talk. Her voice was tight, controlled, that are no longer appropriate given recent changes. No more, no less. I didn't need to destroy her reputation. She was doing that herself. On Thursday, Evelyn showed up at my office. She looked different. The confidence was still there, but it was cracked, shaky around the edges. Dark circles under her eyes, phone buzzing nonstop in her hand. Daniel, please, she said, shutting the door behind her. We can work this out. I gestured to the chair across from me. Sit. She sat. For the first time in years, she looked smaller than me. Not physically, emotionally. My insurance is gone, she whispered. The bank wants collateral. The equipment lease is threatening repossession. If you don't stop this, Nixora will. Fail? I finished. Her eyes flashed. Yes. And you'll look vindictive. Investors will see you as bitter, petty. Investors already know the truth, I interrupted. They know Nixora was built on my foundation. And now that foundation is gone. What do you want, Daniel? She asked finally, voice trembling. I leaned forward, steepling my fingers. I want you to admit it, publicly, to your colleagues, your investors, the press, everyone. I want you to tell them that your beta husband was actually your real co-founder, that you built your empire on my support, my credit, my guarantees, that without me, you're nothing. She shook her head violently. I can't do that. It would destroy my reputation. I smiled coldly. Your reputation is already destroyed, Evelyn. The only question now is whether you learned something from it. I was sipping coffee in my office when the email came in. Subject line, Acknowledgement of Guarantee Withdrawal, Nixora Business Loan. I opened it slowly, savoring each word. The bank confirmed my withdrawal as guarantor, and Evelyn was officially required to either provide collateral or pay down $180,000 within 30 days. Within hours, 2 more notices arrived. One from the equipment financing company demanding either full repayment of $90,000 or immediate return of the hardware. Another from the insurance broker, informing Nexora that liability coverage had been canceled effective immediately due to material change in guarantor status. No insurance, no equipment, no collateral. I leaned back in my chair, exhaled, and thought, the foundation is crumbling. That afternoon, my phone buzzed again, this time with a call from a number Evelyn couldn't ignore. Mr. Hayes, this is the New York State Bar Association. We're conducting a routine compliance review and noticed that Nexora's liability coverage has been terminated. Can you confirm your withdrawal as guarantor? I smirked. Confirmed. The representative sighed. Without malpractice coverage, Ms. Grant's license to practice law in connection with Nexora's consulting services may be suspended. We'll be contacting her directly. Understood. I hung up, feeling the weight of poetic justice settle in. Evelyn had made me a public spectacle. Now she was about to become one herself. By Saturday morning, Evelyn had called me 12 times. By noon, 37. By evening, she was standing outside my apartment, pounding on the door. Daniel! Open up! I finally let her in. She looked like hell. Hair undone, mascara smudged, her pristine designer image replaced by desperation. She clutched her phone like a lifeline. Everything is falling apart, she said, voice shaking. Haven't admitted it yet. Monday morning, she came to my office again. This time without makeup, without pretense, looking like a shadow of herself. Daniel, please, she whispered. I'll lose everything. The board is furious. The investors are threatening lawsuits. My reputation. Your reputation, I repeated slowly, is built on a lie. You pretended to be independent when you were leaning on me the whole time. And then you discarded me like I didn't matter. You thought I wouldn't fight back. You thought I'd roll over and take it. She sat down, tears welling in her eyes. I made a mistake. I got caught up in the pressure, the need to look strong in front of everyone. Please, help me fix this. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a folder. Copies of every contract, every guarantee, every IP filing. I laid it on the table in front of her. This, I said, tapping the stack of papers, is your empire. And this, I tapped my chest, is the foundation you built it on. Without me, you're nothing. And now everyone will know it. By Tuesday, the fallout was impossible to contain. Nexora's investors called an emergency meeting. I was invited, not by Evelyn, but by the lead venture capitalist who wanted to understand the situation. I walked into a boardroom full of suits and sour faces. Evelyn was already there, pale and trembling. Daniel, the lead investor began, can you clarify your position here? Gladly, I said. I was the guarantor of Nexora's loans, equipment, insurance, and core intellectual property. Evelyn decided she no longer wanted me involved in her life, so I withdrew my support. Everything since then has been the natural consequence of that decision. Murmurs spread around the room. One investor turned to Evelyn. You didn't disclose that your husband was financially underwriting this company. She swallowed. 3 weeks. That's all it took. In just 21 days, Evelyn's carefully crafted empire, the rooftop speeches, the glossy investor decks, the flashy branding campaigns, collapsed into rubble. The startup blogs that once hailed her as the future of AI-driven analytics now ran headlines like, Nexora in crisis. Investors pull funding amid financial scandal. Founder's hidden debt trail leads to collapse. LinkedIn was buzzing. Former employees updated their job status. Competitors circled like vultures, scooping up disoriented clients. And Evelyn? She vanished from the spotlight. No more interviews. No more posts about hustle culture or women in tech breaking barriers. Just silence. The divorce itself was almost anticlimactic. Her lawyer tried to posture, tried to argue that my withdrawals constituted malicious interference, but the judge barely entertained it. The contracts were airtight. Evelyn had signed them with full knowledge. Within 2 sessions, the matter was settled. I kept the condo, I kept my accounts, I kept my clean record. She walked away with what was left of her personal belongings and a reputation in tatters. There was no fight, no drawn-out battle. She couldn't afford one. 2 months later, I got a letter in the mail. Her handwriting was shaky, uneven. "Daniel, I don't know where to begin." I thought I was being bold, fearless, disruptive. In reality, I was reckless and cruel. I traded the one person who believed in me for the applause of people who never cared. I'm sorry. I hope someday we can talk, not as partners, but as people who once shared dreams. Evelyn. I read it once, folded it, and dropped it in the trash. Some bridges, once burned, aren't worth rebuilding. Meanwhile, my own life began to expand in ways I hadn't expected. My consulting business, steady but unremarkable for years, pity evaporated. Back at home, I converted the office that once stored her startup paperwork into something new, a library. Floor-to-ceiling shelves, warm lighting, a big leather chair in the corner. Instead of contracts and guarantee papers, the room was now filled with books on business strategy, personal growth, and stories of people who built empires the right way, on respect, partnership, and trust. Sometimes, in the evenings, I'd sit there with a glass of scotch, look around, and think, this is what peace feels like. One evening, about 6 months later, I ran into Evelyn on the street. Pure chance. She was coming out of a coffee shop, hair tied back, blazer worn but neat. She froze when she saw me. "Daniel." I nodded. "Evelyn." We stood there in silence for a long moment. Finally, she said softly, "You look happy." "I am." She opened her mouth like she wanted to say more, but then stopped. She just gave a small nod and walked away. And that was it. No grand reconciliation, no bitter words. Just 2 people passing like strangers. Looking back, I realized something simple. Evelyn thought the world ran on ambition, on confidence, on appearances. But the world doesn't run on appearances. It runs on foundations. Respect, trust, partnership. You can dress up the building as fancy as you want, but if the foundation is cracked, sooner or later the whole thing comes down. And when it does, the only question is, what did you build it on? When people ask me what I learned from all of this, I don't tell them about contracts or guarantees or credit scores. Those are just details, numbers, tools. What I learned is far simpler and far harder. Respect is the real currency. It doesn't matter how much money you pour into someone, how many late nights you energy, my belief. And that choice, the choice to walk away when you're disrespected, is the most powerful one you can ever make. So if you take anything from my story, let it be this. Never confuse sacrifice with worth. Never let someone convince you that your role doesn't matter, when in truth, you may be the only reason the structure is still standing. And never, ever forget the difference between a stepping stone and a foundation is how much respect you demand for being there.